You are watching the Titanic Lie series, and in this video I'm going to explain how you can realize the Titanic was a total hoax.
All my working life, and I'm very interested in the history of the old liners, and most of the pictures I've got today come from Southampton, and they're all to do with ship repair and collisions of the White Star Line. These photographs are taken by Max Mills, the Southampton photographer, and they're taken at Ocean Terminal from where the Titanic sailed, and they were taken after.
Okay, these are supposed to be photographs of the ship called the Olympic. And the Olympic was damaged. It went out from Belfast before Titanic and was on its travel journeys, and some ship bumped into it or something and caused damage. So these so-called photographs are going to prove that the Olympic was damaged and came into port in Southampton, England. Now, keep in mind, at this particular moment, the Titanic is still being constructed and final preparations are being made for it. It has not yet been launched. Okay, so the year's 1911. But well, let me continue with the video.
She came back from the Isle of Wight. She had a collision with the cruiser, HMS Hawke, and as you can see, the damage was quite severe. And this actually affected the Titanic because the ship had to go back to Belfast for repairs, and this took approximately 4 weeks. And during that time, the men had to leave the Titanic work and go on to the Olympic, and this caused a delay.
Okay, so he says it goes back to Belfast. The Olympic. Titanic has not yet been launched, but it will be launched when the Olympic is back at port in Belfast. So if you study the history of this, you will see that the Olympic is always nearby. So for example, in the earlier DVDs, they talk about the construction of two great ships side by side. They began to construct the Olympic the same time they were constructing the Titanic. Don't you get it? There never was a Titanic. Now the way I've been explaining it is a Titanic is a mirror reflection of the Olympic. It's a mirror reflection. In other words, it's always nearby the Olympic, and the Titanic is always there too, in some fashion. So this ship, the Olympic, had to come back to Belfast after being damaged. And when it comes back to Belfast for repairs, that's when the Titanic is launched. And it goes into the water. So basically what you had was just the Titanic was the Olympic kind of dressed up a little differently and painted slightly differently, and somebody paints a sign on it, Titanic. Okay?
The Titanic, which should have been in March, but it was delayed until April, and the rest is history. That was the damage.
The rest is history. Well, not really.
It's the general.
Well, he looks pretty excited here. We'll get to that one in another video maybe, but anyhow, what I'm trying to state as clearly as possible, and I hope I am clear when I make videos to you, that the Titanic is a fiction. But when they need a ship, the ship that is shown is the Olympic. And the Olympic was out and about on its journeys in 1911 and supposedly got damaged and had to go back to Belfast for repairs. Now that's in 1911. So in May of 1911, the Olympic is back in port in Belfast, and guess what? The end of May of 1911, the Titanic is launched. So all they did was basically bring the Olympic back, paint on the side of it Titanic, and change a few things around on the deck or whatever, and then they called it the Titanic. It was really the Olympic. So then the ship goes in the water, and it's launched. Big launching date. Everybody knows about Titanic being launched. But what they don't know is the Olympic was there in port. It was just the Olympic, slightly disguised to fool the world. And that's how they did it. It was a phantom ship, the Titanic. So the striking of the iceberg, the people dying, the people rescued, they were all phantoms too. In other words, it was an act of pretend and drawing on people's wildest imagination. But they loved the story, and because they loved the story, the myth and the legend of the Titanic will go on. But I just busted it wide open for you. You can almost see what I'm talking about by this photograph, that you can see the one ship appears hazy and the other appears solid. And that haziness is because one of the ships doesn't really exist at all. I'd like to thank you for watching this video. End of video.